And now, fellow analysts, we are at the point which I call the zombie stage. The zombie stage is where the game launches. The franchise still walks, but ultimately it is dead inside. There is no soul, no passion, no energy, no footwork. Because once the payment processors took over, they stripped the product of soul. That is how you get a zombie IP like Metal Gear Survive, and most importantly, Metal Gear Delta. So that's what I meant by you break the future. The future of that franchise is simply a walking corpse now. And it's the uncanny valley. People recognize it, but they kind of don't recognize it. They're like, nah, that ain't my Metal Gear. You look like Metal Gear, you kind of talk like him, but that's not you. There's something not right with you. And I mean, after knowing this entire backstory and all of this lore dump that I've just given you, is it really a surprise or a wonder as to why Kojima wants nothing to do with Konami? Why he's basically said that, like, dude, I don't care what they do to the Metal Gear franchise, I'm not touching that thing. Because they've simply bastardized his projects, his baby, his babies. Okay, he's actually had one baby, so his baby. They treat it like trash. I wouldn't want to play that, whatever Konami actually takes out. I wouldn't want anything to do with Konami after that. So we're basically seeing what actually happens when the processors rule. You get zombie-like IPs. And it's crazy because the managers and the owners, they're sitting in their comfy chairs and they're like, dude, just look at how awesome we are, man. We are making money. It's amazing. Like, the disconnect is incredible because on the one hand, the gamers are like, Konami, what happened to you, guy? You used to be the golden child guy. You had a bright future. And then for some reason, you started hanging out with the wrong company. And now you're doing hardcore drugs. You're pushing meth. You're Breaking Bad. What? This is not you. What are you doing? And to the board members, they're like, nigga, what are you talking about? I'm making money. And they don't see how it simply destroys them, their company, and their reputation. It will always be the case that artistry will always be risky, but stability will always equal safe. So you guys can be guaranteed that Konami going into the future will most definitely keep milking the franchise of Metal Gear. They have to. It's their IP anyway. Why wouldn't they? Now, some of you might be saying, I hear you, but I don't quite agree with what you're saying. If you're actually saying that Konami doesn't give a damn about artistry, but simply stability, and they're willing to ship a game in whatever state it's in simply to make money, I don't see how that is possible, especially given how Silent Hill by Blooper Team was actually made and done, and how it was received well by the fans. If you look at the quality in that game, it's not a broken game. It doesn't have as many bugs. Probably it has a few, but that game is good. That game is all right. That game actually shows artistry. So what are you talking about? Well, yes. The thing is, on the surface, it looks as if it's actually two contradictory things. But what you need to understand is that when we're comparing a title like Metal Gear to Silent Hill, Metal Gear is an immersive stealth game. Immersive stealth game means that it demands an expensive design philosophy for it. And Konami is simply not willing to risk that. Not to mention that the game itself, Metal Gear, is still haunted by Hideo Kojima's ghost. If the game is not up to standard, if it doesn't have Kojima's signature quirks and all that stuff, if it's a bootleg, fans will outrightly reject it. There's a reason as to why Konami is not going to make a new Metal Gear game that continues the franchise. That's simply not going to happen. They might, in order to best milk the franchise, they're going to do the remakes. And to show you just how greedy these niggas are, Konami will outsource the game to Virtual Studios. Virtual Studios is known for remakes, but not necessarily creative works, you know. So I'll give it to those guys, and they'll put them under a strict budget. Just make it serviceable. We're not looking to go all out here. And then for Silent Hill, Konami understands. They know that the Silent Hill franchise has been dormant for a long time. And and the audience for that game, for that franchise, are basically starving orphans that will take anything. Just give us something. Give us something serviceable. Give us something good. Just give us something. And not to mention that when we're talking about the type of title that Silent Hill is, it's a horror atmospheric game. It's far less expensive compared to something like Metal Gear. So they're simply going to take that franchise and they're able to even do way more with that franchise, you know, because there's no an auteur's looming ghost over Silent Hill per se. So they're gonna take the franchise, they're gonna take Silent Hill, they're going to make a Silent Hill movie. They're gonna do so many things with the title because they're able to, and they're like, fans are not gonna, like, you know, there's no cult following behind Silent Hill, like, you know, it's not like tied to one person, you know, like Metal Gear. So they're gonna take that game, they're gonna give it to Blooper Team. Blooper Studio is known for making really good horror games, so they're gonna give it to those guys. Horror games are far less cheaper compared to Metal Gear. It's within their conservative pool. They're not going to spend as much money on a horror game. That is because they're allergic to that. They're not going to take that risk. So the smart thing for them to do is to actually, it makes sense for them to actually give the franchise to Blooper Team, because Blooper Team is good at that stuff, and the franchise itself ain't that expensive. It's quite conservative for them, so they're gonna keep milking the franchise that way. That's basically how Konami thinks. That's how they work, which is quite opposite compared to how Capcom thinks. Because if you notice, for quite some time, both companies, Capcom and Konami, they were at the height of prestige at one point in time. And if you didn't know, there was a point in time whereby Konami almost faced, not Konami, but where Capcom almost faced bankruptcy because of their Resident Evil franchise. So both companies kind of came to the same melting or breaking point. When it happened to Konami, in Konami's case, it wasn't that they're going to be bankrupt. But when it happened to them, to the point where they had to make a choice between artistry versus stability. They chose to part ways with Kojima, and they chose stability. And they have been paying the price ever since. When the same thing happened to Capcom doubled down and they chose artistry. And as a result of that choice, we got Resident Evil 7, the Biohazard edition. And that is what essentially revitalized the company. And after that happened, they doubled down even more on their remakes. Because their remakes, Capcom's remakes, they're not just throw whatever at the wall and we'll see what sticks. They had a budget for the remake, and they went even above that for the remake. And the remakes were well received. Beautiful projects, incredible. And they garnered prestige and global relevancy again. Capcom is on top. All their projects, they prioritize artistry. Their projects have soul. It is the stark contrast to Konami. Konami prioritizes stability, and that's it. Capcom, on the other hand, is winning. Devil May Cry, Resident Evil Requiem that's coming out. Capcom has been taking W's. It's not a competition. But all of this was just to show you the philosophy between the two companies. And this entire thing is kind of funny because the same disease that got Visa is now the same disease that actually has Capcom. Because both companies, they chose stability and they're paying the price for it. With Visa chose stability. How? They chose stability by siding with the protesters. They picked a side in a culture war. They thought it was the safest bet for them. They didn't want to rock the boat. And on Konami's end, they also chose stability when they could have been something. They could have been global. They could have been culturally relevant again. So you see, fellow analysts, this whole thing isn't so much about one broken, unfinished game. It's about a world where managers worship stability so much they kill the very thing that they were supposed to protect. Same thing applies to Visa.